In Norse mythology, Hugin and Muninn are a pair of ravens that fly all over the world Midgard, and bring information to the god Odin. Hugin and Muninn are attested in the Poetic Edda, compiled in the 13th century from earlier traditional sources. The Prose Edda and Heimskringla, written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson, in the Third Grammatical Treatise, compiled in the 13th century by Óláfr Þórðarson, and in the poetry of skalds. The names of the ravens are sometimes modernly anglicized as Hugin and Muninn. In the Poetic Edda, a disguised Odin expresses that he fears that they may not return from the daily flights. The Prose Edda explains that Odin is referred to as Raven God due to his association with Hugin and Muninn. In the Prose Edda and the Third Grammatical Treatise, the two ravens are described as perching on Odin's shoulders. Heimskringla details that Odin gave Hugin and Muninn the ability to speak. Migration period golden bracteates, Vendel era helmet plates, a pair of identical Germanic Iron Age bird-shaped brooches, Viking Age objects depicting a moustached man wearing a helmet, and a portion of the 10th or 11th century Thorwald's cross may depict Odin with one of the ravens. Hugin and Muninn's role as Odin's messengers has been linked to shamanic practices. The Norse raven banner, general raven symbolism among the Germanic peoples, and the Norse concepts of the fylgja and the hamingja, attestations. In the Poetic Edda poem Grimnismal, the god Odin provides the young Agnar with information about Odin's companions. He tells the prince about Odin's wolves Jerry and Freki, and, in the next stanza of the poem, states that Hugin and Muninn fly daily across the entire world Midgard. Grimnir says that he worries Hugin may not come back, yet more does he fear for Muninn. In the Prose Edda book Giffaginning, the enthroned figure of Hytal's Gangleri, the two ravens named Hugin and Muninn sit on Odin's shoulders. The ravens tell Odin everything they see and hear. Odin sends Hugin and Muninn out at dawn, and the birds fly all over the world before returning at dinner time. As a result, Odin is kept informed of many events. He adds that it is from this association that Odin is referred to as Raven God. The above-mentioned stanza from Grimnismal is then quoted. In the Prose Edda book skalds.The, Hugin and Muninn appear in a list of poetic names for ravens. In the same chapter, excerpts from a work by the skald Einar Skulason are provided. In these excerpts, Muninn is referenced in a common noun for raven, and Hugin is referenced in a caning for carrion. In the Heimskringla book Ynglinga Saga, a new Hebraized account of the life of Odin is provided. Chapter 7 describes that Odin had two ravens, and upon these ravens he bestowed the gift of speech. These ravens flew all over the land and brought him information, causing Odin to become very wise in his lore. In the Third Grammatical Treatise, an anonymous verse is recorded that mentions the ravens flying from Odin's shoulders, Hugin seeking hanged men, and Muninn slain bodies. The verse reads, two ravens flew from Nakar's shoulders, Hugin to the hanged and Muninn to the slain. Archaeological record. Migration period gold bracteates feature a depiction of a human figure above a horse, holding a spear and flanked by one or more, often two birds. The presence of the birds has led to the iconographic identification of the human figure as the god Odin, flanked by Hugin and Muninn. Like Snorri's Prose Edda description of the ravens, a bird is sometimes depicted at the ear of the human, or at the ear of the horse. Bracteates have been found in Denmark, Sweden, Norway and, in smaller numbers, England and areas south of Denmark. Austrian Germanist Rudolf Sumek states that these bracteates may depict Odin and his ravens healing a horse and may indicate that the birds were originally not simply his battlefield skilled companions but also Odin's helpers in his veterinary function. Vendel-era helmet plates found engraved in Sweden depict a helmeted figure holding a spear and a shield while riding a horse, flanked by two birds. The plate has been interpreted as Odin accompanied by two birds, his ravens. A pair of identical Germanic Iron Age bird-shaped brooches from Bjergsbacka in northern Denmark may be depictions of Hugin and Muninn. The back of each bird features a mask motif, and the feet of the birds are shaped like the heads of animals. The feathers of the birds are also composed of animal heads. Together, the animal heads on the feathers form a mask on the back of the bird. The birds have powerful beaks and fan-shaped tails, indicating that they are ravens. The brooches were intended to be worn on each shoulder after Germanic Iron Age fashion. Archaeologist Peter Vang Petersen comments that while the symbolism of the brooches is open to debate, the shape of the beaks and tail feathers confirm that the brooch depictions are ravens. Petersen notes that raven-shaped ornaments worn as a pair, after the fashion of the day, one on each shoulder, makes one's thoughts turn towards Odin's ravens and the cult of Odin in the Germanic Iron Age. Petersen says that Odin is associated with disguise and that the masks on the ravens may be portraits of Odin. The Oseberg tapestry fragments, discovered within the Viking Age Oseberg ship burial in Norway, feature a scene containing two black birds hovering over a horse, possibly originally leading a wagon. In her examination of the tapestry, Skalla and Steiningstad interprets these birds as Hugin and Muninn flying over a covered cart containing an image of Odin, drawing comparison with the images of Nerthus attested by Tacitus in 01 CE. Excavations in Ribe in Denmark have recovered a Viking Age lead metal cast as mold and 11 identical casting molds. These objects depict a mustached man wearing a helmet that features two head ornaments. Archaeologist Stig Jensen proposes that these ornaments should be interpreted as Hugin and Muninn, and the wearer as Odin. He notes that similar depictions occur everywhere the Vikings went, from eastern England to Russia and naturally also in the rest of Scandinavia. A portion of Thorwald's cross depicts a bearded human holding a spear downward at a wolf, his right foot in its mouth, and a large bird on his shoulder. Andy Orchard comments that this bird may be either Hugin or Muninn. Rundata dates the cross to 940, while Plaskovsky dates it to the 11th century. This depiction has been interpreted as Odin, with a raven or eagle at his shoulder, being consumed by the monstrous wolf Fenrir during the events of Ragnarok. In November 2009, the Roskilde Museum announced the discovery and subsequent display of an yellow inlaid silver figurine found in Letta, Denmark, which they dubbed Odin from Letta. The silver object depicts a person sitting on a throne. The throne features the heads of animals and is flanked by two birds. The Roskilde Museum identifies the figure as Odin sitting on his throne Lithshaft, flanked by the ravens Hugin and Muninn. Theories. The Helion, an Old Saxon adaptation of the New Testament from the 9th century, differs from the New Testament in that an explicit reference is made to a dove sitting on the shoulder of Christ. Regarding this, Ronald Murphy says, in placing the powerful white dove not just above Christ, but right on his shoulder, the Helion author has portrayed Christ, not only as the son of the All-Ruler, but also as a new Odin. This deliberate image of Christ triumphantly astride the land with the magnificent bird on his shoulders is an image intended to calm the fears and longings of those who mourn the loss of Odin and who want to return to the old religion. legend symbols and ways. With this image Christ becomes a Germanic god, one into whose ears the spirit of the Almighty whispers. Scholars have linked Odin's relation to Hugin and Muninn to shamanic practice. John Linder relates Odin's ability to send his thought and mind to the trance state journey of shamans. Linder says the Grimnismal stanza where Odin worries about the return of Hugin and Muninn would be consistent with the danger that the shaman faces on the trance state journey. Rudolf Simek is critical of the approach, stating that attempts have been made to interpret Odin's ravens as a personification of the god's intellectual powers, but this can only be assumed from the names Hugin and Muninn themselves, which were unlikely to have been invented much before the 9th or 10th centuries, yet that the two ravens, as Odin's companions, appear to derive from much earlier times. Instead, Simek connects Hugin and Muninn with wider raven symbolism in the Germanic world, including the raven banner, a banner which was woven in a method that allowed it, when fluttering in the wind, to appear as if the raven depicted upon it was beating its wings. Anthony Winterbourne connects Hugin and Muninn to the Norse concepts of the Fylgja, a concept with three characteristics: shape-shifting abilities, good fortune, and the guardian spirit, and the Hamingja, the ghostly double of a person that may appear in the form of an animal. Winterbourne states that the shaman's journey through the different parts of the cosmos is symbolized by the Hamingja concept of the shape-shifting soul, and gains another symbolic dimension for the Norse soul in the account of Odin's ravens, Hugin and Muninn. Quote, in response to Simek's criticism of attempts to interpret the ravens philosophically, Winterbourne says that such speculations simply strengthen the conceptual significance made plausible by other features of the mythology, and that the names Hugin and Muninn demand more explanation than is usually provided. Bernd Heinrich theorizes that Hugin and Muninn, along with Odin and his wolves Jerry and Freki, reflect a symbiosis observed in the natural world among ravens, wolves, and humans on the hunt. In a biological symbiosis, one organism typically shores up some weakness or deficiency of the other, as in such a symbiosis, Odin, the father of all humans and gods, though in human form, was imperfect by himself. As a separate entity he lacked depth perception, and he was apparently also uninformed and forgetful. But his weaknesses were compensated by his ravens, Hugin and Muninn, who were part of him. They perched on his shoulders and reconnoitered to the ends of the earth each day to return in the evening and tell him the news. He also had two wolves at his side, and the man-god-raven-wolf association was like one single organism in which the ravens were the eyes, mind, a memory, and the wolves the providers of meat and nourishment. His god, Odin, was the ethereal part. He only drank wine and spoke only in poetry. I wondered if the Odin myth was a metaphor that playfully and poetically encapsulates ancient knowledge of our prehistoric past as hunters in association with two allies to produce a powerful hunting alliance. It would reflect a past that we have long forgotten and whose meaning has been obscured and badly frayed as we abandoned our hunting cultures to become herders and agriculturists, to whom ravens act as competitors.